Away from Ireland, thank you very much, to talk about her experience of a mum that has had a child with encephalitis. So over to you, Kellie, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And first, I'd like to start by thanking Julie and her team at the Encephalitis Society for inviting me over here to speak about our experience with our daughter. So to give you a little bit of a background about our daughter, she's now nearly 6, and in December of 2022 is when she became sick. But before that, she was in play school, she was doing everything normal, but she was an extremely quiet child, very, very quiet. So quiet, in fact, that her play school teachers would always ask, was she able to speak? And I would say, yes, absolutely. She's meeting all her milestones perfectly. She's just very, very quiet. And she was so quiet that what she would do is just nod for yes and no. That's all she would do for a good 2 to 3 months. We weren't worried as parents because that was her normal disposition. So in the December, she started to develop a cough. And it was a cough that I wasn't overly worried about at first, because like any other child, around that time of the year, she was going to catch everything. But the cough, it wasn't that frequent. It was maybe once every day, every second day, but it was very, very productive. So like any mother, I brought her to the hospital to the doctor, and the doctor said, look, this is viral, she'll shake it off. So that was okay. I came home happy that I was after doing a little bit for her and getting her checked out. But then the temperature came, and the temperature crept up very, very high. And we tried everything. I had her on Nurofen, I had her on Calpol around the clock, waking her up during the night, but the temperature never seemed to come down. So again, after being in a lot of contact with the hospitals, with the doctor, with the care doc, I agreed with them, look, if the temperature didn't kind of subside by the following day, I was bringing her in. So in late December, I think it was, the start of January, 2nd of January, the 1st of January, I brought her into A&E hospital, and she was okay. She was still quiet and doing her normal things. She was colouring away on her colouring books and playing with her toys, and we got triaged and she was brought into A&E. But in a few hours of being in A&E, that's when she started to become very unresponsive. So it happened really, really quickly. And I remember calling a nurse, and I said, I'm finding it very difficult to wake her. So that's when they come down with the team, and they started doing a numerous amount of tests on her. And the tests all came back negative. They tested her for meningitis and all those other type of illnesses. With that then, she was admitted to Wexford General Hospital, where they took amazing care of her. And again, over the next couple of days, again, we had the same thing. Doctors and nurses would ask us, do you think, she's okay in regards to her quietness, because she was so quiet? And again, I would reassure them, and I'd say, no, she's absolutely fine. This is her normal disposition. So on one of the mornings, I remember a lovely lady consultant came in to see us, and she was checking her reflexes. And as a parent and not a non-medical person, I was happy because I seen something move in her reflexes, and I was like, oh, thank God. But when the doctor went outside, I was reading her body language, and I felt, I wonder, is she really okay? So the next day, the same consultant came back, and she was checking the reflexes again. And I said, is she okay? And she said, yes, I'm getting the correct reflexes today. She said, I wasn't yesterday. She said, I was very, very worried about your daughter. And I said to her, is she going to be okay now? And she said, yes, she seems to be improving. And this is when I suppose, looking back on things, we learned that encephalitis, you can have ups and downs, and you can look like you're getting better in 1 minute, and then all of a sudden you're gone back and you're back to kind of square one. So I suppose for us that was kind of the start of us as parents realising that she was actually a little bit more sicker than just having a viral infection. So I think it was the next night, she asked me, could she go to the bathroom? So I took her out of bed, expecting her to be able to stand, and she went straight to the floor. She wasn't able to stand on her own 2 feet. So again, I called the doctor, and the doctor came up and said, look, this is part of whatever viral illness that she has, and that she has now developed ataxia. So, okay, again, I went to, like Diane said, Dr. Google, to find out what ataxia was all about. And I said, that's okay. Sure, look, we can deal with that. Sure, look, at anyone with a viral illness can be a little bit unsteady with their feet. That's okay. So I'm nearly sure it was that night as well, because at this time in my brain is actually quite traumatic. So my days are a little bit mixed up. But I'm nearly sure this was earlier on in the night, maybe about 11 o'clock. And then about 5 o'clock the following morning is when a nurse came in to do the normal checks, the blood pressure. And we both looked, and she was starting to have a seizure. But the seizure was uncontrollable. They couldn't control the seizure in the hospital. That's when a paediatric consultant was called, and he had pulled me aside and he said, look, we think your daughter has encephalitis. She needs to be blue lighted to Temple Street Hospital in Dublin. So again, very traumatic time. We had no idea what was going on. You know, it was just, in the click of a finger, things had changed for us. And to see our daughter having a seizure, which she had never had before, an uncontrollable seizure that the hospital couldn't control, was very, very frightening. So again, she was taken to Temple Street Hospital, and she was brought straight to ICU. She was brought straight into ICU, and she spent the first 24 hours in ICU. And again, we were biting our nails and hoping, you know, like this wasn't going to be too serious and she was going to be okay, and what's after happening and all of the above. So the following day, she was let out of ICU down to the ward. We were ecstatic. We said, brilliant. We're on the way home now. We're out in the ward. You know, we're over the worst of it. How wrong we were. We were only starting. So we were in the ward, and as you do as a parent, I suppose, I wanted to do my own motherly checks on her. And I was asking her all the little questions about Granny and Grandad and Mammy and Daddy and brothers and sisters and what day of the week was and all of that. And she seemed to be okay. And I had said to her that that's great, I'm going to ring your grandparents, let them know how they are. And I walked out of the room, and she went into a huge temper tantrum, a huge outburst. And that wasn't normal for her, that level of outbursts. So we had a lovely nurse come in to say, look, we'll settle her, you go for a cup of tea. But I knew there was something else there with her. It wasn't her normal screaming that she would go on with. And with that then, both me and my husband, we walked back into the room, and I said, there's something different after happening here. The temper had changed. It was gone into like a Tourette's. She was just screaming the one word over and over and over again. And then straight away she went into seizures. She would come out of a seizure after a couple of minutes, and the involuntary body movements would start. She was really, really after changing. Her whole demeanour had changed. She was just screaming, shouting, and chanting. That's mostly what it was. And that went on for a couple of hours. So the medical team then knew that this was, again, a lot more serious. So at that point, then again, there was more testing done. There was MRIs, there were spinal taps, CT scans, huge amount of bloods done, you name it, everything was done. Everything came back negative, which we couldn't understand. Well, except for the spinal tap showed that she had some form of viral illness. So she was brought back to ICU, and that's where she spent the remainder of the month in ICU. She received IVIG, which is immunoglobulins, and she received high doses of steroids. Thankfully, that was the only line of medication that she needed to get, because she did start to steadily improve. But again, her speech and her I suppose her strength wasn't there. So with the amazing team, and they were absolutely amazing to us in Temple Street, they gave us so much support. They gave us, as you would in ICU, around the clock care, but not just for her, for our family and our extended family as well. They were really, really good. We had the best of the best in regards to her professor who looked after her, and, you know, gave us basically a day-by-day account of how and where she should be by the 2nd day and the 3rd day and the 4th day. And she did. So we had a lot of hope. So we left Temple Street then at the end of the month, but no one could have prepared us for the, I suppose, how would you say, the aftermath of the whole thing as parents. So she left, first of all, just to kind of give you a bit of context as well, she left on a lot of medication. She left on high doses of steroids and a lot of anti-seizure medication. So when we got her home, that's when we had really, really bad behavioural issues to deal with, huge outbursts. And not to even make a story sound good, but there were outbursts that would last, 6 hours, and that's intense. And we would have 3 hours in the morning, maybe 3 hours in the afternoon, and anything could trigger it. And she didn't even know herself, because she was so small at the time. So we battled on with that, and we spoke to Temple Street, and again, they're correct in what they're saying. Look, this is part of the encephalitis journey. It's going to take at least 2 to 4 years for the brain to settle and to heal again. So, we said, right, okay, no problem. We can do that, as long as we know that it's part of it. But we also learnt as well, I suppose, in our journey that medication has also created some of those side effects. And that was okay too, because that gave us a little bit of hope in thinking, what, she's going to be off the steroids now in May. This will be good. We're nearly there. But we missed our daughter, because it wasn't the daughter, that we, had before she went into hospital. So we had huge behavioural changes like that, and also her personality changed. So from that quiet child that wouldn't speak to anyone to a child that, if I brought her to the park, wanted to play with everyone, which was amazing, but it was just a very different child we were looking at. She would go up to children and she would say, "Can I play with you? What's your mummy's name? Do you want to play with me?" And again, that is normal for some children, but it just wasn't for ours. And it was lovely to see, but I suppose something that was very, very different. So again, with all that, we gave medication a chance, but we rang back Temple Street. We explained the situation. We said, look, there has to be some sort of support here for the parents. So they put us in touch with neuropsychology, who were absolutely amazing in helping us to navigate all of the, I suppose, the challenges that come along with encephalitis. We also contacted the Encephalitis Society, and the first person I spoke to there was John. So John, I don't know if you're here today, I would love to meet you. And John was amazing to us as well in giving us some extra information that might help in our journey. So we had a good year of contact with Temple Street in neuropsychology and neurology, and they also assessed her before she was to start primary school. Because like any parent, we were worried if she would even start school, would she be able for school, academically, with the behaviours that were going on. There were inappropriate behaviours sometimes as well. However, she got assessed and she flew her assessment, absolutely flew, which is amazing again. We thought, brilliant, this is great, no problems. So we had a really good year, I suppose, leaving all the behavioural things aside. Academically, everything was coming back. She was walking and she was talking. Her speech was really after improving again. And we had a review in Temple Street with a professor, and he decided, do you know what, she's doing really well. We're going to take her off her medication. We're going to start weaning her off the medication even. So at this point, I was kind of thinking, maybe she could go home with you while she's doing the wean, just to keep her safe, because we were very nervous, obviously, as parents as well. We had never done this before. So she tolerated that wean really, really well. And she came off her anti-seizure medications. She was off all her steroids by the end of last year. She was only off the anti-seizure medication about 24 hours, but she had also caught COVID and influenza, which knocked everything back on us again. So with that, we went on a little road trip back to the hospital. And again, as Diane was saying, to advocate for your child, I just knew something wasn't right. And I was worried that she was having a relapse or something like that. And I said to the doctors, look, she's not right. And they were like, what do you mean she's not right? I don't know. She's just not right. And we were so lucky, because about 11 o'clock that night, she had a huge seizure again. That was the first seizure she had since she had left the hospital. So the seizures now from January of this year, so it's January of this year, they have been uncontrollable. And it's only recently that we're getting them under control with the help of Temple Street. They are also wanting to redo her antibody testing, which is fantastic. And they're also going to do more MRIs, CT scans, EEGs, everything, the works. Her neurologist has also agreed to present her case to, I think it's an immunoneurology or inflammatory neurology meetings. Now, I could be corrected on that. At the end, I think, of next month, to all neurologists across the UK, just to see if there's anything else that has been missing. So we as parents are absolutely delighted about that. Now I'm just going to see if I missed anything. No, I think that's fairly much it. So yeah, it's been a very, very difficult time. She's here with us today, so feel free to come up and chat to us. I'd love to speak to anyone else that has gone through it as parents. You know, and it's lovely to hear from Diane, who is now an adult living with it, because it's amazing to see what's ahead of us. I also forgot to say that our daughter is autoimmune encephalitis with seronegative, so they never actually identified the antibodies. So that again can be some positive news, but it can also be some trying news as well, because there's not a huge amount of research, as I believe, in that area. So that's something that we'd really, really like to, I suppose, learn more about. Okay.
Wow, what a journey you're been on and are still going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would be your kind of key takeaway message to any kind of parents that are watching this?
I suppose as a mother, my only thing was that just like, and I suppose we all do it, if you feel there's something not right, just stick with it. And like even, you know, family has always said that to us. And actually our own professor said this. He said, I'd be a very silly man to go again the word of a mother. That's
quite right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He said, it's a science. I can't explain it. He said, it's a science. So he said, if you feel there's something not right, you know, we'll check it out. So we're very blessed with that. And also, I suppose, it does take time. It is a long journey. We were told that it's going to be a long journey, and 2 to 4 years, we're now heading 2 years into it. Some days we feel we're going backwards, and then other days we feel we're making a lot more progress. That was the other thing as well. They had said to us, which I briefly said, our neurology, when we were in ICU as well, and in Temple Street, they were very clear with us, and they said, you know, this is like a roller coaster. You might feel you're getting better for 6 months or for 3 months, whatever the case is, and then you'll decline again. But that's all part and parcel. But knowing that information really, really helped us to understand and to be patient with the journey.
So I think that managing expectations really helps kind of sort of settle a little bit. And as a parent, as a mum, what would you say to another mum, like, you know, kind of words of hope, I guess?
I suppose take the support where you can get it. That is one of the things that we have learned. Now, it's hard. It's easy for me to say because we don't always take it ourselves, but anything at all. You know, I'd be blessed. My husband is here. He's here today as well. He has been amazing in all of this because as a mother as well, you want to take on everything yourself, and I can't always do that, so he steps in to do it. But our extended family has helped us so much. So take the help, because you need to look after your own mental health, you know, throughout this journey as well. It's not easy, but, you know, it does get better. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can't fill from an empty cup,
no,
as they say.
That's
absolutely.
It.
Any comments or observations, questions from the audience that are in today? No? Brilliant. You are off the hook.
Okay. Thank
but
you.
you're around today,
yeah.
and anybody just come and chat and everything like that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
you.
Oh, we can't do that. We're doing this, everyone.